Hi, welcome back again to another Prokraft video. This video is going to be about our Backscratcher Kit. Now it's a fairly straightforward kit, but there are one or two things that are worth bearing in mind, particularly when mounting it and putting it together. This project I'm going to do with a bit of a twist, and the twist is, on this occasion, a barley twist. Now I'm not that well practiced at doing barley twists. I've done a few. I actually did a pen not that long ago and managed to get a barley twist in it. It's quite a size, but I did actually manage to do it. So I'm going to do that today. It's nowhere near as difficult as you might think, and the end result is normally quite impressive. But anyway, back to the Backscratcher Kit, which I've got here in front of me. You'll see it's got a solid brass end, gold plated with its little hanging bit. There is actually a thread in there, so we'll try and thread it on later, but we're just going to cut roughly the right size to fit that on. And here is the Backscratcher bit, and in the Backscratcher bit there's a little bit of brass connector there, which I can't undo by hand because I've been fiddling with it in my bit of wood, getting it all ready. The bit of wood I've got is here. If I pop that in, there we go. Just making sure I tell you the right drill holes. Right, there's the little bit of brass end there. It goes in an 8.5mm hole. It can be glued in afterwards, or it can be put in beforehand. And there is the gold plated hand bit for scratching your back. Right, let's have a look at the blank size that I'm using and the way I'm actually going to fit it in the lathe. Right, the blank I've got here is a piece of beech, because if you've watched my other videos you'll know I've got lots of beech, and one of the reasons I'm using beech is because this is a nice light coloured piece, and when we come to do the barley twist I've got to put lots of markings on here. They look more complicated than they are, but it's much easier to see on a light bit of wood than it is something like, I don't know, sapele, which is quite dark. You'll see in the end I have drilled an 8.5mm hole in the end. That's for the brass connector there, that fits in there, and you'll see there's some, they're not threads, they're just some little marks there that help to secure that in place. So you can glue that in at the end if you want to, but probably if you haven't had it in and out the blank as I have over the last couple of minutes, you can probably just knock that in there and it'll probably be fine, just pushed in as it is. In the other end you'll see I've driven in my drive centre, which is stuck in there quite nicely. So the next thing I'm going to do is mount it on the lathe, and the one thing that I must say is I think it's quite important to get the blank this way round. If you do it the other way around and drill a hole and then try and get your drive centre in the centre of there, that's going to make life really difficult, because you're probably never going to get your drive centre right smack bang in the middle. So now I did say I was going to tell you the size of the blank, and I haven't done that, have I? It's about 23cm long, which is 9 inches in old money, and about 40mm across, which I think is about 1.5 inches, isn't it? Yeah, about 1.5 inches across. It's plenty big enough at this blank. You may well get away with a smaller one. You will also, you possibly didn't notice, on the ends I've marked the centres on the ends, and I'm going to be using those marks a little bit later on to mark out for the barley twist. But for the moment all I'm going to do is just turn the blank round, and then we're going to look at sizing the ends first before carrying on with the barley twist part. The next thing to do is to get the ends correct. Now my measurements tell me that I need 15mm at this end. This is the hand end, the scratchy end, and at the heel end, the other end, it needs to be 16mm. If you're a millimetre out, it doesn't really matter, so you can do the same to 15mm, but I'm going to do mine 16mm at this end and 15mm down the hand end, and then we'll look at what shape we can get in the middle. I'm actually going to use the end of the kit just to pop on there, leaving a little bit of a gap for the string in the end, and just put a little mark where we're actually going to turn the tenon down to at that end there. At this end it's entirely up to you what you do and what shape you make it, because we've got a flat piece that's just going to slot on the end there. If you wanted to, you could put the brass piece in there and use the live tailstock on the brass piece to get a perfect flush fit, but you would then have to sand down the brass and refinish it with the wood, which you can do quite easily. We do, you know, I do that on my solid brass pen kits, but I'm just, for the sake of being different, going to do it slightly differently on here today. So now we've got those ends correct, we can now look at shaping the rest of it, and at the moment it's quite a large piece and it's a bit too big to hold, to be honest, so I'm going to trim the rest of this down nice and quick. A little tip for you, you saw me use the roughing gouge earlier to rough out this piece of wood. If you don't like clearing up and you have a little bit of a practice with one of your other tools, namely the skew chisel, and you trim off that way, you'll find it makes much less mess all over your workshop. But for the purpose of, because I'm filming it, I've done it quick that way. Now for this end here, if I want a really good fit on the end, I can get the end cap and turn this section so it's going to meet up exactly with the end cap, or you can turn some kind of shape. It's entirely up to you. If I get the end piece here, I'll just have a quick measure and see what the outside is. So if I turn that to 21.5 millimeters, if I turn that to 21.5 millimeters, I'd get a perfect meet up with that bit there. I'm not going to do that for the purpose of filming, I'm just telling you can. What I'm actually going to do now is just taper this part off here down to the bit we've marked where the brass end cap's going to go in, and then I'm going to sand this and get it nice and smooth, ready for marking out for the barley twist. Now what I said earlier about marking the ends, of course I've just cut all the markings off this end like a clot. I'm lucky that I have got I've got a little gadget on here that I can set this, because what I now need to do is to mark the length of this into quadrants. So 1, 2, 3, 4 pencil marks. That's the first stage of marking out for the barley twist. So I've got my steel rule and I'm going directly over the top and just gauging the centre of either end and drawing a line down there, and we'll now undo the lathe, which you can't do whilst holding a pencil, and we'll turn that round 90 degrees, lock it off and do exactly the same on this one here. If you move slightly, it's not the end of the world, because when it comes to shaping, you'll see that you can adjust the shape a little bit by hand as we go on. I'm now just going to put the other 2 marks on the other sides. So hopefully you'll see I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 pencil marks lined that way. The next thing to do, and I'm going to pop the tool rest back in for this, is to decide where my ring marks are going to go. Now, having divided that into quadrants, I now need to mark along here a series of rings where I'm going to join up in a few minutes, and that's where we're going to cut the actual barley twist from. Now, when it comes to measuring these, it depends how tight or loose a barley twist you want. The closer the markings are together, the tighter the barley twist you'll get, and the further apart they are, the looser the twist you'll get. The tighter it is, the more work there is to do. The looser it is, the less work there is to do. So I'm going to do mine a medium, and I'm going to space mine 10 millimeters apart all the way down. And you'll see when it's got to this end, I haven't got this quite right yet, but we can always, what I'm going to do is just tidy this bit up right at the very end when I've got the main shape, and then I can see how the shape is going to blend into this part here. So I'm going to start and I'm going to put a mark at 15 millimeters there. That's going to be my starting point, and I'm then going to mark every 10 millimeters all the way along one of the lines here. And of course you don't have to do the whole length in barley twist. You could do a section of barley twist and then a different shape, or of course if you want to keep it really simple, don't do a barley twist at all, and just turn it as you would anything else. Right, those are all my marks. The next thing I'm going to do is do the rings all the way around. I'm just going to do that by hand, like so. And as I say, it looks more complicated than it actually is. If you're a fraction out, it's not the end of the world. I've seen as we go on to the next stage, people do it several ways, using tape and all kinds of stuff to mark out. What I've found is actually easier is actually just to do it by hand and by eye, because for the life of me, other than tape, I struggle to use tape, and I haven't got anything else that I can actually bend around to get a line between the sections that I need to. And it will all make sense in a minute when I've just finished marking these out. There we go. So it really doesn't take very long. So what I've actually done is to put lots of little rectangles all over this. And what I'm going to do now is to start with one end, and I'm going to join corner to corner. I'm going to join that corner to that corner, and I'm just going to do it, as I said, by eye. And then I'm going to join the next section, that corner, up to that corner. And I'm just literally just sort of scribbling it in, and we're going to go all the way along, and this is going to give us our barley twist shape. This is a fairly loose one, as you'll see, but it depends how far down you cut it. We won't be able to cut too far down on this because it's a back scratcher, and it needs to have a little bit of pressure on it. And I'll tell you what, I'll stop talking and just let you watch me finish this. Now the next step is to take a saw. This is a vintage dovetail saw, but one that's fairly fine toothed. And what we're actually going to do is just follow the line that we've just marked, not too deep. We're just going to follow that line all the way around. This is probably the trickiest bit to get it accurate. There we go, we've now got a saw line all the way down there that whatever tool we use now hopefully is going to follow that line. Now the next thing to look at is tools, and we can use a variety of tools, it depends what you prefer. I've got a spindle gouge here, which I'll try in a moment, that's not too bad. I've got some other German chisels here that are angled ones. There's probably a name for them, I can't remember now. These are razor sharp, they're really, really nice, but you may well not have these. Chances are you've got a spindle gouge. Or as the other things, tools I've used for these is actually a file. I've got a rough file and a slightly smoother one, and generally I find these are what I prefer. It's a bit slower, and it doesn't go quite so deep, but I find I've got a bit more control over these. But we'll start with the other ones so you can see how each tool actually reacts with the wood. So I'm going to start with this tool. Now what I have to actually do is turn the lathe and hold this at the same time, and it helps if you actually have your tool rest down there. And what you should be doing is just following the line. It's not easy with these. Some people use carving chisels. I've got some carving chisels. I'm not using them because I think most of you out there probably haven't got them. And I'll try and use, you can see there that I'm starting to take that out. I might just do the other side, it might be a bit better working along the bevel of that. And I'm just turning the lathe around. It is quite a slow process doing this. Let's have a go the spindle gouge and see how we get on with that. That's not too bad. I reckon that's actually slightly easier. I'm just following that line as close as I can to get it started off. And you'll find the tool should really follow the saw mark that you've made. And talking of saw mark, my thumb's getting sore from holding this chisel. There we go. And eventually you'll just find your own rhythm and pattern, and you can see that starting to come along now. Just to show you the other way, I'll get the file and start filing that down. So as you'll see, I've shaved off down pretty much as far as I want to, and it's quite a narrow groove. So what you can now do is look, I've been filing at this angle exactly along with the line, and there's still quite a large flat bit here. So what I'm now going to do as I turn is actually just change the angle of the file so we can actually start to smooth over these parts here, because at the moment it's a little bit wide. So try and keep it at roughly the same sort of angle, and you'll start to smooth off. And I've now got some sandpaper I've just put around the file, and I'm just working that up and down the twists in the wood to get that nice and smooth. Now I've just trimmed off either end, so hopefully we're going to get a good fit when we fit the parts. So we've sanded it down. I think in all honesty this is probably a little bit too big. I should have gone a little bit smaller, but hopefully that'll explain the principle. Now I know I mentioned tools occasionally, and I've got loads of wood turning tools, most of which I don't need. Two that I always can't manage without. One is a pair of calipers, and the other, if you have the chance, is an air compressor, because it's just marvellous at getting all the bits of dust off your work and off your hands as well. Just so you can see where you need to do some light finishing. So I've got my main stem. I've trimmed off this. In actual fact, this is the heel end, and I've actually cut off too far, but I'll adjust that when I do the instructions. And at this end I've just flattened that off on the belt sander. So we've got our three parts. And put the little claw and the end in there, and that will just push in. As I say, you can probably just push it in. You can glue it if you want to, and that'll just twist on there, and the other end will just about screw on there. And there we have one barley twist, a little bit wider than I'd hoped, but one barley twist Backscratcher Kit. So there we have one barley twist Backscratcher Kit. Pretty simple to put together, but we've got instructions on the website as always. Ooh, lovely. And I mentioned halfway through the video I did a barley twist pen, and there you go, there is a barley twist pen that I've made. There's not many pen kits you can do that with, but our solid brass pen kits you can. So as always, I hope that's been useful. Thanks very much for joining me again. Happy turning, and do it safely of course. Until next time, bye bye for now.